Today, the U.S. Supreme Court handed down a decision with serious consequences for former President Donald Trump's allies and co-defendants in ongoing legal battles. Mark Meadows, Trump's former chief of staff, was hoping for a lifeline from the highest court to get his Georgia state prosecution moved to federal court. Change he believed would give him better odds of avoiding conviction. Instead, the Supreme Court unanimously rejected his appeal, effectively sinking his hopes of escaping prosecution at the state level. Let's break down why this ruling is so significant. First, it's important to understand the context. Meadows was charged alongside Trump and 17 other co-defendants in Georgia under RICO statutes, accusing them of trying to overturn the 2020 election results in Trump's favor. Meadows tried to argue that his actions were within the scope of his official duties as chief of staff. He contended that since he was a federal official, his case should be heard in federal court. If he had succeeded, this could have opened the door for his charges to be dismissed altogether. However, a federal district judge disagreed with him, ruling that his actions to interfere with the election were not within the scope of his duties as chief of staff. The federal appeals court upheld this ruling, leaving Meadows with the Supreme Court as his last hope. Meadows turned to the Supreme Court, perhaps expecting that some of the more conservative justices might be sympathetic to his case. In a surprising twist, the court declined to hear his appeal without dissent, effectively upholding the lower court rulings and leaving his prosecution in the state court system. But before we get into the details, hit the subscribe button, like this video, and leave your thoughts in the comments. Thank you for your support. So, what does this mean for Meadows and his co-defendants without the option of moving to federal court? Meadows will face trial in Georgia under state law, a prosecution that could move forward regardless of whether Trump is elected president in 2024. Since presidential pardons only apply to federal convictions, even a Trump return to office would not shield Meadows from state charges. This rejection by the Supreme Court also signals to Trump's other allies in similar legal situations that they are unlikely to find an escape through federal jurisdiction. In a broader sense, this decision could have implications for other Trump allies facing election-related charges. Many of them, including several alleged fake electors in states like Arizona, have tried to move their cases to federal court as well. With the Supreme Court's ruling against Meadows, it seems unlikely that similar attempts to evade state-level prosecution will succeed. Effort's decision sends a clear message. Efforts to interfere in state elections do not constitute official federal duties and therefore cannot rely on federal jurisdiction as a shield. One big question that arises is why Meadows was so intent on getting to federal court. The assumption is that a federal setting would give him a better chance of evading conviction, especially if Trump returned to office and could pardon him. However, moving to federal court does not actually change the case from state to federal law. It would still be prosecuted as a state case with state charges and state prosecutors just heard in a federal courthouse. The main benefit to Meadows would have been the possibility of arguing additional defenses he wouldn't have in state court. But with this Supreme Court rejection, those defenses are now off the table. In a broader reflection on the court's decision, some analysts see this as an unexpected sign that the Supreme Court may not be as partisan as some have feared, at least when it comes to election interference. Although this is only one case, and some may argue it's a small concession, the court's unanimous rejection of Meadows' request seems to suggest a willingness to uphold the legal boundaries that prevent federal officials from improperly influencing state election processes. For Meadows and other Trump co-defendants, this ruling marks a major setback. The RICO prosecution in Georgia can move forward against him, and other state-level cases against Trump allies, such as those in Arizona, will likely proceed unimpeded as well. It's a signal that the judicial system, from state courts to the Supreme Court, is determined to hold individuals accountable for attempts to subvert the electoral process. This decision underscores the importance of state prosecutions in election-related cases, as these cases would remain in effect regardless of who holds the presidency. For Trump's allies facing charges in states like Georgia and Arizona, the pathway to immunity has just narrowed, and the state-level prosecutions now have a clear mandate to continue. If you're following these legal developments, please consider subscribing to stay updated on these cases and the broader fight for accountability and justice in the American political system.